"You got me nothing?" my husband yelled, his face contorted with rage as he stared at the empty gift box I'd placed before him. The restaurant fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned to witness my humiliation on our 20th anniversary. My hands trembled beneath the table, clutching what he didn't yet know was coming. "Nothing," I whispered, the word barely audible over the clinking of expensive cutlery. "After 20 years, I finally understood what you truly deserve." I slid the manila envelope across the polished mahogany table. The scratch of paper against wood seemed deafening in the hushed dining room of Bellini's, Boston's most exclusive restaurant, where reservations were made months in advance. The place where Richard proposed to me 2 decades ago, down on one knee with a diamond that made other women gasp. His fingers, manicured weekly at his favorite salon, reflexively opened the envelope. I watched his eyes scan the first page. The color drained from his face, starting at his hairline, now receding despite the expensive treatments he secretly thought I didn't know about, and cascading down to his chin like a wave of realization. "Divorce papers?" he hissed, keeping his voice low but unable to mask the venom. "On our anniversary? Have you lost your goddamn mind, Jennifer?" The waiter approached with a bottle of champagne, the Dom Perignon Richard had ordered when we arrived, before he realized I hadn't bought him the Rolex he'd been hinting at for months. I raised my hand slightly, stopping the young man in his tracks. The confusion on his face mirrored what I'd felt for years. "No champagne tonight," I said softly. "I won't be staying." Richard grabbed my wrist as I moved to stand, his fingers digging into my skin with familiar pressure. How many bruises had I covered over the years? How many long-sleeved blouses in summer? How many lies to my sister Kate when she asked about the makeup caked too thickly on my collarbone? "You don't walk away from me," he growled, leaning forward. His cologne, the one I'd given him last Christmas, couldn't quite mask the scent of another woman's perfume lingering on his collar. "You are my wife. Not anymore," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Years of fear dissolved in that moment, replaced by something I hadn't felt in so long I'd almost forgotten its name. Power. Lightning flashed outside the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the Boston skyline for a brief, electric moment. Thunder followed seconds later, echoing the storm that had been building inside me for years. I stood, gently but firmly pulling my arm from his grasp. "I've given you 20 years, Richard. I've given you everything. My youth, my dreams, my inheritance. 3 miscarriages trying to give you the son you demanded." My voice didn't break. "Not this time. You've taken enough." His eyes darted around the restaurant, suddenly aware of the attention we were attracting. Richard Caldwell, respected neurosurgeon, Boston's charity gala regular, being left by his devoted wife in public. His reputation, the thing he valued above all else, was at stake. "Sit down," he commanded through clenched teeth. "We'll discuss this at home." "There is no discussion," I said, reaching for my coat. "And there is no home. Not anymore." The first crack in his perfect facade appeared, a twitch beneath his left eye, the tell he had when he was losing control. I'd seen it before every violent outburst, every cruel punishment. But this time, I wasn't afraid. "You have nothing without me," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper I knew too well. "No money, no status, no friends. I made you, Jennifer." I allowed myself a small smile. "That's where you're wrong, Richard. For the first time in 20 years, I have everything. I have myself." Outside, the rain began to fall in earnest, drops hammering against the windows like applause. I walked toward the exit, each step lighter than the last. Behind me, I heard the sound of glass shattering, Richard's trademark loss of control when things didn't go his way. I didn't look back. The doorman held the door, concern evident in his eyes. "Are you all right, ma'am? Should I call you a taxi?" "No, thank you," I said, opening my umbrella. "I've arranged for a car." As if on cue, a black Lincoln pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, opening the rear door for me. Richard wouldn't recognize him, couldn't know that Mark was Kate's husband, the brother-in-law Richard had always treated with thinly veiled contempt. "You're free," Mark said simply as I slid into the back seat. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw Richard burst onto the sidewalk, divorce papers clutched in his hand like a weapon. Our eyes met one final time across the distance. I had expected to feel sorrow, or perhaps guilt. Instead, all I felt was relief as we pulled away into the stormy night. leaving behind the man who had gradually stolen my life, one day at a time. The first night of my new beginning was appropriately tumultuous. Rain and wind battering the windows of Kate's guest room where I would stay until everything was settled. I lay awake, listening to the storm rage outside, no longer afraid of loud noises in the dark. My name is Jennifer Caldwell, though soon I would return to Jennifer Mitchell, reclaiming my maiden name like finding an old, cherished possession you'd forgotten in an attic trunk. I was 45 years old, and until yesterday, I had been the perfect doctor's wife for 2 decades. If you'd asked anyone in our social circle about me, they would have described a fortunate woman, the elegant hostess of immaculate dinner parties in our Beacon Hill brownstone, the dedicated volunteer who organized the hospital charity auctions, the supportive spouse who never complained about Richard's demanding schedule, his frequent conferences, his explosive temper behind closed doors. What they didn't see were the careful calculations that governed my every move. How I measured my words each morning to gauge his mood, how I studied his calendar to prepare for the difficult days, how I maintained the precise weight he demanded, colored my hair the exact shade he preferred, wore only the clothes he approved. Kate's guest room was small but warm, nothing like the cavernous master bedroom of the brownstone where I'd spent so many nights lying rigid with anxiety, listening to Richard's breathing, praying he wouldn't wake in one of his moods. Here, surrounded by my sister's mismatched furniture and the scent of the cinnamon candle burning on the nightstand, I felt something unfamiliar. Safety. Morning arrived with surprising gentleness. Sunlight filtered through curtains that hadn't been selected by an interior designer. The sheets weren't 1,000-count Egyptian cotton, but they smelled of fabric softener and comfort. For the first time in years, I had slept without nightmares. I padded downstairs in borrowed pajamas to find Kate already in the kitchen, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, so different from my own carefully maintained blonde waves. "Coffee's ready," she said, sliding a mug across the counter. "No china cups here, just ceramic mugs with silly sayings." Mine read, "Nevertheless," she persisted. I almost smiled. "How are you feeling?" Kate asked, studying my face with the directness that had always made Richard uncomfortable. He'd worked hard to limit my time with my outspoken sister over the years, finding fault with her working-class husband, her modest home in Somerville, her choice to teach at a public school rather than pursue a more respectable career. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "Empty, relieved, terrified." Kate nodded. "All normal. But you did it, Jen. You actually did it." Had I? After years of secret planning, meticulous documentation, careful saving from the household accounts, was I really free? Or was this just the calm before Richard's inevitable retaliation? My phone, the new one Kate had helped me purchase, unknown to Richard, buzzed with a text from Alan Peters, my lawyer. We had an appointment at 10 a.m. to discuss next steps. Richard had already called the office 7 times since last night. "He'll try to freeze the accounts," I said, more to myself than to Kate. "Already handled," she replied. "Alan filed the emergency orders at 8 a.m. Richard can't touch the joint accounts now, and the judge granted the protective order based on the evidence you provided." The evidence was a password-protected cloud drive containing years of photos, bruises, medical reports filed under false causes, audio recordings of threats. My insurance against the day Richard's carefully constructed mask slipped in public. I'd never wanted to use it. Exposure would devastate his career, and despite everything, some twisted part of me had still wanted to protect him. But my own survival had finally become more important than his reputation. "What about the house?" I asked, sipping the coffee that tasted nothing like the imported beans Richard insisted on. "The security company changed the locks last night and installed the new system. He can't get in without triggering an alert to the police." Planning my escape had taken 3 years of painstaking groundwork. 3 years of squirreling away funds, gathering evidence, establishing independent credit, making connections with people Richard didn't know or control. 3 years of pretending nothing had changed while methodically dismantling the prison my marriage had become. "I should feel guilty," I whispered, tracing the rim of my mug. 20 years is a long time to throw away." Kate's hand covered mine. "You didn't throw it away, Jen." He did, one day at a time. The kitchen door swung open, and Mark entered, dressed in his UPS uniform. Unlike Richard's tailored suits and precise appearance, Mark was all practical comfort and genuine warmth. He stopped when he saw me, offering a cautious smile. "Morning, Jen. Holding up, okay?" I nodded, surprised to find I meant it. Better than expected. "Good," he said simply. "Because there's a situation at your house. Richard showed up around dawn. The security company called me instead of bothering you." My heart stammered in my chest. "What happened?" "Nothing you need to worry about," Mark assured me. "The police escorted him away after he tried to break in. He's been served with the temporary restraining order. Alan is handling it." The old Jennifer would have panicked, would have rushed to smooth things over, to protect Richard from consequences. The new Jennifer, the one who was just starting to emerge, took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you for dealing with it," Mark shrugged. "That's what family does." He grabbed a travel mug of coffee and kissed Kate goodbye. "I'll be home for dinner. We're having my mom's lasagna, if that's okay with you, Jen." "Sounds perfect," I said, though I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten carbs without calculating the disapproval in Richard's eyes. After Mark left, Kate and I prepared for my meeting with Alan. I dressed in clothes Kate had purchased for me. Nothing like the designer labels that filled my closet at the brownstone. The simple black pants and blue blouse felt like a stranger's clothes, but also like possibility. "They'll try to paint you as unstable," Kate warned as she drove me downtown to Alan's office. "He's already telling friends you had some kind of breakdown." I nodded, watching Boston pass by outside the window. The familiar skyline looked different somehow, as if I were seeing it through new eyes. "I know. He'll say I'm mentally ill, that I'm vindictive, that I'm having an affair. He'll try to turn everyone against me." "Not everyone," Kate said firmly. "Not those who matter." But who did matter now? For 20 years, my entire social world had revolved around Richard. His colleagues, his friends, his preferred circles. Who would remain when the dust settled? Alan Peters's office occupied the 10th floor of a glass tower in downtown Boston, a world away from the wooden paneling and leather furniture of Richard's lawyer's firm. Alan was younger, hungrier, and, most importantly, had no connections to the hospital board or the social circles Richard dominated. "Jennifer," he greeted me, rising from behind his desk. "Right on time." He gestured for Kate and me to sit, his expression serious, but not unkind. "We have some developments to discuss. Richard's lawyer, Martin Whiteley, reached out this morning. They want to meet." "It's too soon," I said, my mouth suddenly dry. "I'm not ready to face him." "You won't have to," Alan assured me. "This would be between the attorneys. But before we discuss that, there's something else you need to know." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were bank statements from an account I'd never seen before, in a bank I didn't recognize. "What is this?" I asked, scanning the numbers that seemed to blur before my eyes. "An account Richard has maintained for the past 8 years. My investigator found it during our preliminary financial discovery." 8 years, I calculated backward. Around the time Richard had convinced me to invest my inheritance, money my grandmother had left specifically to me, with instructions that it was mine alone, into what he called our future. The $450,000 that had disappeared into investments, I was told, had failed during the recession. "How much?" Kate asked, her voice tight. Alan's expression remained professionally neutral. "The current balance is just over $2 million. The room seemed to tilt. $2 million? I echoed. "From my inheritance?" "Partially," Alan confirmed. "The initial deposit matches the amount of your inheritance. The rest appears to be diverted income from his practice, and we believe cash payments from pharmaceutical companies for promoting certain medications. Illegal kickbacks. The kind of ethical violation that could cost a doctor his license. The kind Richard had publicly condemned in speeches at medical conferences. There's more," Alan continued, pulling out another document. "He's filed a motion to have your prenuptial agreement enforced." "What prenuptial agreement?" Kate demanded. "Jen never signed one." But even as she spoke, my blood turned to ice. The memory surfaced like a corpse rising from dark waters. The night before our wedding, Richard presenting a thick document, assuring me it was standard protection that his family's lawyer insisted upon. I'd been 25, naive, desperately in love with the brilliant, charismatic doctor who'd chosen me. I'd signed without reading, trusting him completely. "It's not valid," I whispered. "He told me it was just formality. I didn't even read it." Alan's expression softened slightly. "Unfortunately, the document appears legally executed. It states that in the event of divorce, You're entitled only to a flat payment of $50,000, regardless of the length of marriage or circumstances. Kate swore under her breath. I felt strangely calm, as if watching the scene from outside my body. Can we fight it? I asked. We can and will, Alan confirmed. The circumstances under which you signed, the fact that you weren't represented by separate counsel, and especially the evidence of abuse all give us grounds to challenge its validity. But you should be prepared for a fight. Richard has already moved to restrict access to all accounts and assets. Of course he had. Control was Richard's oxygen. What about my personal items? Clothes, jewelry, family mementos? Even as I asked, I knew the answer. He's claiming everything of value was purchased with his earnings and is therefore his property. He's already had the locks changed on the safe deposit boxes. The pearls my grandmother had worn on her wedding day. The antique silver locket containing a photo of my parents, both long deceased. Items of no real financial value but priceless to me. Now hostages in Richard's war. Can he do that? Kate demanded. Technically, no, Alan replied. But by the time we get a court order to access those items, he didn't need to finish. We all knew what would happen to anything Richard decided was leverage. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Jennifer, it's Melissa Bradford. We need to talk. Please call me. Melissa, chairman of the hospital auxiliary committee, wife of the chief of surgery, and the closest thing I had to a friend in Richard's circle. I showed the message to Kate. It's starting, she said grimly. He's reaching out through proxies. I nodded, declining the call that immediately followed the text. What do we do now? I asked Alan. We fight, he said simply. I've filed for emergency maintenance to ensure you have living expenses until the financial situation is resolved. The hearing is tomorrow morning. Richard will be required to appear, but you can attend virtually if you prefer. The thought of seeing Richard, even on a screen, made my stomach clench. Will the abuse evidence be discussed? I asked quietly. Not at this preliminary hearing, Alan assured me. This is strictly about finances. As we left Alan's office, my phone buzzed continuously with texts and calls from numbers I recognized. Women from the auxiliary, doctors' wives, people I'd hosted in my home dozens of times. None of them had reached out in the 15 hours since I'd left Richard. Now they were suddenly concerned. In the elevator, I turned off my phone. He's mobilizing his troops, Kate observed as we reached the lobby. They were never my friends, I said, realizing the truth as I spoke it. They were extensions of him, connections I was required to maintain. The doors opened to reveal Melissa Bradford herself, perfectly coiffed in a designer suit, blocking our path with determination that would have been admirable in any other context. Jennifer, she said, her voice pitched to convey concern while her eyes assessed my outlet store clothes with barely concealed disdain. Thank God I caught you. We've all been so worried. Kate moved slightly, positioning herself between us. This isn't the time, Melissa. Melissa ignored her, focusing entirely on me. Richard is devastated, Jen. He told us everything about your episodes, the medication you stopped taking. Everyone understands, and we want to help you come home where you belong. The familiar script, Richard's preferred narrative whenever I showed any independence. Jennifer is unwell. Jennifer is unstable. Jennifer needs guidance. I'm not sick, Melissa, I said quietly. I'm finally getting well. Her perfectly composed expression faltered. Richard said you'd say that. The denial is part of your condition. My condition, I repeated. And what condition would that be? Depression? Paranoia? He's been protecting you for years, covering for your difficulties. She lowered her voice to a theatrical whisper. We all know about the time you had to be sedated at the Morgans' anniversary party. The sedation had been Richard administering a tranquilizer after I'd questioned him about the lipstick on his collar in front of colleagues. The episode had been my attempt to maintain dignity while being half-dragged to our car. Go home, Melissa, Kate interjected. And tell Richard his messengers aren't welcome. Melissa's smile hardened. Richard was right about your sister's influence. Such a shame. As she walked away, her parting shot drifted back to us. The auxiliary board is meeting tomorrow to discuss your removal, Jennifer. Just so you know, another piece of my former life, severed with surgical precision. She's the first, Kate warned as we exited the building. There will be others, I nodded, watching Melissa disappear into a waiting town car. Let them come. I have nothing left to lose. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. What else could Richard take from me? What else had I not yet discovered was already gone? The drive back to Kate's house was silent. My mind traveled backward through time, peeling away layers of my marriage like an archaeologist uncovering a buried civilization. Had there been warning signs from the beginning? Had I ignored red flags? Mistaking control for care? Possession for love? I met Richard Caldwell during my final year of nursing school. I was 24, working nights at Massachusetts General Hospital to pay for my education. He was 32, already establishing himself as one of Boston's most promising neurosurgeons. The night we met, I'd been assigned to assist in a complex procedure after the scheduled nurse called in sick. "That went well," he'd said afterward, his confident smile making my heart flutter despite my exhaustion. "You have steady hands, Nurse Mitchell." He asked me to dinner that same night. I should have declined. It was against hospital policy, a power imbalance from the start. But Richard Caldwell had a gravitational pull that was impossible to resist. Brilliant, charismatic, focused entirely on me in a way no man had ever been. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Expensive restaurants, weekend trips to his family's Cape Cod estate, introductions to Boston society I'd only glimpsed from the periphery of hospital corridors. He brought me into a world of privilege that seemed magical after my modest upbringing in working-class Dorchester. "You're a diamond in the rough," he'd tell me, his fingers tracing my collarbone in the darkness of his penthouse apartment. "I'll help you shine the way you deserve." I didn't recognize it then as the first step in a systematic reconstruction, the subtle implication that I wasn't quite enough as I was, that I needed his guidance to become worthy of the world he inhabited. 6 months after we met, he proposed with a diamond so large it felt foreign on my finger. "Too much?" he'd asked, noticing my hesitation. "It's beautiful," I'd assured him. "I'm just not used to wearing something so valuable." His smile had been indulgent, patronizing in a way I couldn't quite name. "You'll have to get used to it. A surgeon's wife can't look ordinary. A surgeon's wife, not Jennifer, not even Richard's wife. The title that would define me for the next 2 decades. My parents had both passed away by then. My father from a heart attack when I was 16, my mother from breast cancer just after I'd started nursing school. Only Kate remained as family, and her relationship with Richard had been strained from their first meeting. "He looks at you like you're a prize he won," she'd whispered at our engagement party. "Not a person he loves." I'd dismissed her concerns as jealousy or overprotection. Now, 20 years later, I wondered how different my life might have been if I'd listened. After the wedding, a lavish affair with 500 guests, most of whom were Richard's colleagues and connections, came the first major change. Richard didn't want me working as a nurse anymore. "My wife doesn't need to work," he'd declared. "It reflects poorly on me, as if I can't provide." I'd argued, explaining that nursing wasn't just a job to me. It was a calling, a purpose. The fight that followed was our first real conflict, ending with a compromise that wasn't really a compromise at all. I could volunteer at the hospital, chairing committees and organizing fundraisers, but my nursing career was over. With it went my independence, my professional identity, and my own source of income. I didn't realize then how calculated that sacrifice would be, the first of many Richard would demand. The early years weren't all darkness. There were moments of genuine happiness, of connection that felt real. Mornings waking up to breakfast in bed on my birthday, evening walks along the Charles River, Richard's hand warm in mine as we discussed books or films or his latest medical triumph. The pride I felt watching him save lives with his gifted hands. We tried to have children, another expectation of a surgeon's wife. 3 pregnancies, 3 devastating losses. After the 3rd miscarriage, Richard's disappointment curdled into something darker. "Maybe it's for the best," he'd said, watching me cry in our bedroom after returning from the hospital. "You're too emotional to be a good mother anyway." The cruelty had been so casual, so matter-of-fact, that I'd questioned my own reaction. Was I too emotional? Was my grief inappropriate? The seeds of self-doubt Richard planted took root, flourishing in the carefully tended soil of my growing isolation. My grandmother's death when I was 30 brought both grief and unexpected financial independence. Her will had been explicit. The inheritance was mine alone, to be kept separate from marital assets. $450,000 wasn't a fortune by Richard's standards, but it represented something precious. Choices. For 2 months, I guarded that inheritance, researching investment options, considering what I might do with funds that were truly mine. I dreamed briefly of returning to school, perhaps pursuing the nurse practitioner degree I'd once wanted. Richard's persuasion was subtle at first, then increasingly insistent. That money sitting in a savings account is wasteful, Jennifer. I can triple it within 5 years if you let me invest it properly. I resisted longer than I had on most issues, but Richard's persistence wore me down as water erodes stone. Eventually, I signed the paperwork he presented, transferring my inheritance to his management. Within 18 months, he informed me that the investments had failed catastrophically in the market downturn. My inheritance, my grandmother's final gift, had evaporated, or so I believed, until today. The deception about my inheritance marked a turning point, though I didn't recognize it then. Richard's control tightened, his criticism sharpened, his temper shortened. The first time he hit me, a slap that left my ears ringing after I questioned a charge on our credit card statement, he'd been immediately contrite. "I'm under so much pressure," he'd sobbed, holding me as I trembled. "The Jenkins case is going to trial. The new department head is threatening my research funding, and I come home to accusations. I lost control. It will never happen again." But it did happen again, and again, each time followed by apologies, gifts, promises. Each cycle shorter than the last, until the pretense of remorse faded entirely. Violence became another language in our household, spoken in closed rooms with curtains drawn. "No one would believe you anyway," he reminded me during one particularly brutal episode. Who would take the word of a housewife over one of Boston's most respected surgeons? He was right, of course. I'd constructed my own prison, brick by brick, choice by choice. The perfect doctor's wife didn't have bruises. The perfect hostess didn't cry herself to sleep. The perfect Mrs. Caldwell didn't document her husband's abuses in a password-protected file, collecting evidence like a detective building a case she never intended to bring to trial. Until one day, I did. "Jen?" Kate's voice pulled me back to the present as we pulled into her driveway. "Where did you go just now?" I realized there were tears on my cheeks, though I couldn't recall when I'd started crying, just remembering how I got here. Kate squeezed my hand. "The important thing is that you are here, not where you've been." Inside, the house was quiet. Kate's teenage sons were at school, Mark at work. The normality of their lives, the comfortable mess of a family home, the photos on refrigerator showing vacations and sports games, the schedule of band practices and dentist appointments, highlighted everything my marriage had lacked. "I should have left years ago," I said, sinking onto a kitchen chair. "You left when you could," Kate corrected gently. "That's what matters." My new phone buzzed again. This time, the name on the screen made my heart stop. Sarah Winters, Richard's office manager for 15 years, the woman who scheduled his surgeries, managed his calendar, and, I'd always suspected, knew more about his affairs than anyone. "Should I answer it?" I asked Kate. She hesitated. It could be a trap, Richard using her phone, or it could be important, I countered. Sarah had always been polite to me, though never warm. She maintained professional distance, but never participated in the subtle humiliations Richard's colleagues sometimes inflicted. I accepted the call, putting it on speaker. "Jennifer? It's Sarah Winters." "Hello, Sarah," I replied cautiously. "What can I do for you?" There was a pause. Then, "It's more what I can do for you. We need to meet. I have information you should have. Information about Richard's arrangements." Kate and I exchanged glances. "What kind of information?" I asked. "Not over the phone," Sarah insisted. "Tomorrow, noon, the Gardner Museum Cafe. Come alone." The line went dead before I could respond. "It's a setup," Kate declared immediately. But something in Sarah's voice, an urgency, a decision finally made, suggested otherwise. After 15 years at Richard's side, what had prompted her to reach out now? "I have to go," I said. Kate shook her head. "At least let me come with you," she said, alone. "And I say Richard is capable of anything. You're not meeting anyone connected to him without backup." I didn't argue further. The weight of 20 years pressed down, reminding me that my judgment where Richard was concerned had been compromised for too long. Perhaps it was time to trust someone else's instincts instead of my own. The emergency financial hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m., a mercifully virtual proceeding I could attend from the safety of Kate's living room. Alan had prepared me for what to expect. Richard would oppose any financial support, claiming I had access to my own resources. He would characterize my departure as abandonment. He would present himself as the wronged party. What I wasn't prepared for was seeing Richard's face on the screen. Composed, distinguished, wearing the same expression of concerned patience he used with difficult patients. "Good morning, Your Honor," he greeted Judge Harmon with perfect deference. "Thank you for hearing this matter promptly." I sat beside Alan on Kate's sofa, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached. On screen, Richard's attorney, Martin Whiteley, presented their position with practiced precision. "Mrs. Caldwell left the marital home without warning or justification, Your Honor. Dr. Caldwell remains baffled by her actions and concerned for her well-being. He opposes this motion for emergency maintenance on the grounds that Mrs. Caldwell has access to substantial personal funds." Judge Harmon, a silver-haired woman with piercing eyes, turned to Alan. "Mr. Peters?" Alan's response was measured. "Your Honor, Mrs. Caldwell left the marital home due to a documented pattern of abuse. We have filed for dissolution on grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment. As for financial resources, Dr. Caldwell has systematically isolated Mrs. Caldwell from any independent means. He terminated her nursing career shortly after their marriage, controlled all household finances, and has now restricted access to all joint accounts." Richard's face betrayed nothing, but I recognized the subtle tightening around his eyes. He hadn't expected me to disclose the abuse so publicly, so quickly. Judge Harmon reviewed the documents before her. "I see the prenuptial agreement stipulates a payment of $50,000 upon dissolution, regardless of circumstances. Mr. Peters, your filing challenges the validity of this agreement?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Caldwell signed under duress, without independent legal counsel, and was not provided full financial disclosure. Furthermore, the agreement fails to meet the basic test of conscionability given the length of the marriage and the sacrifices Mrs. Caldwell made for Dr. Caldwell's career." Martin Whiteley interjected smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may, Mrs. Caldwell is a trained nurse with a bachelor's degree. She was fully capable of understanding the document she signed. As for her sacrifices, Dr. Caldwell provided Mrs. Caldwell with a life of exceptional privilege and comfort. Any career adjustment was a mutual decision." My throat tightened. 20 years reduced to career adjustment, as if my professional identity had been a hobby I'd casually set aside. Judge Harmon turned to me directly. "Mrs. Caldwell, what is your current financial situation?" Alan had coached me for this question. I took a deep breath. "Your Honor, I have approximately $3,000 in a personal account that Dr. Caldwell is unaware of. I saved it gradually from household expense money. I currently have no income, no credit cards in my own name, and no access to our joint accounts, which Dr. Caldwell froze immediately after I filed for divorce. And your current living situation?" "I'm staying with my sister temporarily." Richard's attorney leaned forward. "Your Honor, Doctor, Caldwell is willing to allow Mrs. Caldwell to return to the marital home while these matters are resolved. Her departure was unnecessary and, frankly, seems calculated to create precisely this type of emergency." Before Alan could object, Richard himself spoke. "If I may, Your Honor." At the judge's nod, he continued, his voice conveying perfect concern. "I remain deeply worried about Jennifer's mental state. She has struggled with anxiety and depression for years, often refusing the treatment I recommended as her physician. I believe her current actions stem from a psychological break, rather than any legitimate grievance. The familiar narrative, Jennifer is unstable, Jennifer is confused, Jennifer needs management rather than independence." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Alan responded firmly. "Your Honor, Dr. Caldwell is not Mrs. Caldwell's physician, and these amateur psychological assessments are both inappropriate and revealing of the controlling dynamic that led to this dissolution. Furthermore, we categorically reject the offer to return to the marital home, given the documented safety concerns." Judge Harmon studied both screens before speaking. "I'm granting temporary maintenance in the amount of $8,000 monthly to be paid from the joint accounts Mr. Whiteley acknowledges exist. This order remains in effect until the preliminary hearing next month. Additionally, Mrs. Caldwell is to have access to her personal belongings at the marital residence. Dr. Caldwell will arrange for her to collect these items with a neutral third party present." Relief washed through me. It wasn't everything, but it was breathing room, financial oxygen after years of economic asphyxiation. "Thank you, Your Honor," Alan said. Richard's expression hadn't changed, but I saw the storm brewing behind his calm facade. He would find a way to punish me for this minor victory. After the hearing ended, Alan turned to me. "That went well. Judge Harmon has a reputation for seeing through performances. He'll appeal, I said, certain of Richard's next move. He can try, Alan replied, but these temporary orders are rarely overturned. Now, about your meeting with Sarah Winters. Are you sure you want to proceed with that? I nodded. I need to know what she knows. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum was busy with late-morning tourists when Kate and I arrived shortly before noon. We'd agreed that she would sit at a separate table, close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough that Sarah wouldn't be spooked. I'll be watching, Kate assured me as we entered the museum cafe. First sign of trouble, I'm calling security. I nodded, scanning the space for Sarah's familiar figure. I spotted her in a corner booth, away from windows, nursing what appeared to be a cup of tea. She looked different outside Richard's office, smaller somehow, without her usual professional armor of tailored suits and perfect posture. Thank you for meeting me, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. Sarah glanced around nervously. Is anyone with you? No, I lied, following her gaze to the entrance. I'm alone. She seemed to relax slightly. I don't have much time. Richard thinks I'm at a dental appointment. Why are you here, Sarah? I asked directly. 20 years as Richard's wife had taught me to recognize when pleasantries were waste of precious time. She reached into her purse and withdrew a thumb drive. 16 years of records, she said, placing it on the table between us. Bank statements, travel arrangements, hotel confirmations, receipts, gift purchases. Her eyes met mine. Names. My mouth went dry. Affairs? She nodded once, sharply. 23 that I know of, possibly more. The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd suspected Richard's infidelity, had even found evidence occasionally, but the scale, the systematic nature it implied, was staggering. Why are you giving me this? I managed to ask. Sarah's fingers twisted the paper napkin beside her cup. Because last week he asked me to forge your signature on investment transfer documents. Because 2 years ago he had me book a hotel room where he took Dr. Sullivan's 19-year-old daughter. Because I've watched him destroy your confidence for 15 years. And I did nothing. She leaned forward slightly. And because 3 days ago, after you left, he came to my apartment at 2 a.m., drunk and violent. He said if I didn't help him fix the situation, he'd make sure I never worked in healthcare again. Fear crawled along my spine. Did he hurt you? He tried, she said simply. I have a security system with cameras. That's on here too. She tapped the thumb drive. I've worked for Richard since I was 22. He's paid for my mother's nursing home care. He's held that over me for years. But I won't help him hurt you anymore. I slid the thumb drive into my pocket. He'll know it was you. I've already resigned, she replied. Effective immediately. My mother has been moved to a facility he doesn't know about. I'm leaving Boston tonight. She stood, gathering her coat. There's one more thing you should know. The woman he's been seeing most recently, it's Melissa Bradford, the chairman of the Hospital Auxiliary Committee, the woman who'd ambushed me outside Alan's office, the wife of Richard's closest colleague. How long? I asked, though it hardly mattered. 3 years, Sarah answered. Be careful, Jennifer. He's frightened, and that makes him dangerous. She walked away without looking back, disappearing into the museum crowd before I could thank her. Kate appeared at my side moments later. What happened? She demanded. You look like you've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, I replied quietly. Just the truth. We left the museum immediately, both of us scanning the streets for any sign we were being followed. The thumb drive felt impossibly heavy in my pocket, a digital Pandora's box containing horrors I both needed and dreaded to see. Back at Kate's house, we plugged the drive into her computer, password protected and secured behind a VPN as Alan had advised. What unfolded on the screen was a meticulous chronicle of betrayal. Hotel receipts, flight itineraries, jewelry purchases, explicit emails. Sarah had organized everything chronologically, creating a timeline of Richard's double life that paralleled our marriage with sickening precision. The first affair had begun 8 months after our wedding. The most recent email to Melissa had been sent yesterday, a reassurance that he would handle Jennifer, and they could move forward with their plans soon. Most devastating were the financial records, not just the account containing my stolen inheritance, but dozens of hidden investments, offshore accounts, and cash transactions designed to shield assets from any potential divorce settlement. He's been planning for this possibility from the beginning, Kate said, scrolling through document after document. He never intended to share anything with you if the marriage ended. I felt strangely calm as years of gaslighting crystallized into confirmation. The constant suggestions that I was forgetful, emotional, unreliable, all calculated to make me doubt my own perceptions as money disappeared and reappeared in accounts I wasn't meant to discover. My phone rang. Alan. I answered immediately. Jennifer, he said without preamble. Richard's counsel just contacted me. They're offering a settlement. $200,000. Immediate divorce decree. No alimony. No further claims against any marital assets. He's panicking, Kate whispered, pointing at the date on the latest bank transfer. This morning, moving another $500,000 to an account in the Cayman Islands. Tell them we decline, I said, a strange power flowing through my veins. And Alan, I have something you need to see. That night, I couldn't sleep. Rain tapped against the windows of Kate's guest room, a gentle rhythm at odds with the storm raging inside me. 23 affairs, millions hidden in accounts I'd never known existed, a prenuptial agreement designed to leave me destitute if I ever found the courage to leave. The betrayal was so complete, so meticulously executed, that it defied simple emotional responses. This wasn't just a husband's infidelity or financial deception. It was architectural, a structure built over decades with the sole purpose of containing me, while allowing Richard absolute freedom. I sat by the window, watching raindrops trace silvery paths down the glass. In their random patterns, I searched for meaning, for some explanation of how I'd surrendered my life so completely to someone who'd never valued it. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:17 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. I know you're awake. You always watch the rain. My blood froze. Richard. How had he gotten this number? Before I could process the invasion, another text arrived. The security system at your sister's house is pathetic. One camera, no motion sensors. I could be inside before anyone knew. Terror gripped me. Not for myself, but for Kate. For her family sleeping peacefully down the hall. Richard knew where I was. Richard was watching the house. A third text appeared. Call me. Now. Or I start making calls. To Mark's employer. To your nephew's school. To Kate's principal. How long before they realize the cost of harboring you? With shaking hands, I dialed the number. He answered on the first ring. There's my sensible girl, Richard said, his voice achingly familiar despite its menace. Step outside onto the porch. We need to talk. You're here? I whispered, peering through the rain-streaked window at the darkened street. That violates the restraining order. The restraining order, he repeated with a soft laugh. A piece of paper signed by a judge who doesn't know me, doesn't know us. 20 years, Jennifer. 20 years of my life invested in you, and you think you can just walk away because you had a bad day. Where are you? I demanded, scanning the shadows beneath the street lamps. Close enough to see you standing by the window in Kate's cheap little guest room. Close enough to enter that house if I choose to. My mind raced. If I woke Kate, if I called the police, how quickly could they respond? Fast enough to protect her family if Richard truly intended harm? What do you want? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. I want what's mine, he replied simply. You. Home where you belong. This embarrassment ended. That's not going to happen. No? His tone remained conversational, almost pleasant. Then perhaps I should come inside and discuss it with everyone. I'm sure your nephews would be interested to learn about their aunt's mental health issues. Maybe I should show them the videos. My stomach lurched. What videos? The ones from our bedroom, from the vacation in Belize. You were uninhibited after those margaritas. Not behavior becoming of a schoolteacher's sister-in-law, I think. I hadn't known. Another violation, another secret surveillance, another piece of my privacy stolen without my knowledge. You wouldn't, I said, though I knew he would. Richard recognized no boundaries when his control was threatened. Try me, he suggested mildly. Or we can simplify everything. Come outside. We'll talk in my car. Just talk. Every instinct screamed danger. Richard was at his most lethal when he appeared reasonable, when he pretended negotiation was possible. I need to think, I said, playing for time. You have 3 minutes, he replied. Then I rang the doorbell. I ended the call, mind racing. If I went outside, I'd be at his mercy, potentially kidnapped or worse. If I stayed inside, I risked bringing his rage down on Kate's family. If I called the police, how would I prove he was nearby before he disappeared or forced his way inside? In the darkness of the guest room, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of accommodation, of prioritizing Richard's feelings over my safety, of accepting his reality instead of trusting my own. All of it suddenly felt foreign, like clothes that no longer fit. I looked at my phone, then at the sleeping house around me. 20 years of submitting to threats had led me here, to this moment of terrible choice. What would 20 more years of courage look like instead? With steady hands, I opened the phone's recording app, then dialed Richard's number again. "Time's up," he answered. "Are you coming outside?" "No," I said simply. "I'm not." Silence stretched between us. Then, "You're making a serious mistake." "I've made 20 years of mistakes," I replied. "This isn't one of them. If I come inside—" "You won't," I interrupted, surprising both of us, "because I've just dialed 911 on Kate's landline. It's on speaker beside me right now. They're recording this conversation and dispatching officers to this address." A lie, but delivered with a conviction that came from some untapped reserve of strength I hadn't known I possessed. "You're bluffing," Richard said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but here's what isn't a bluff. I have everything, Richard. Sarah gave me everything today." His sharp intake of breath confirmed what I'd suspected. He hadn't known about Sarah's meeting with me, hadn't yet realized the extent of what she'd shared. Your finances, your affairs. The records of money, transfers that coincide precisely with my inheritance disappearing. The hotel receipts, with Melissa Bradford, dating back 3 years. The offshore accounts you've been funneling hospital funds into. The video from Sarah's apartment where you threatened her. "You're lying," he said, but the confidence had drained from his voice. "Every document has been copied to 5 separate secure locations," I continued, the strategy forming as I spoke. "If anything happens to me, to Kate, to her family, if any of us even stubs a toe, those records go directly to the hospital board, the medical licensing board, and the IRS. Your choice, Richard. Walk away now, or lose everything." The silence that followed seemed to stretch into infinity. Then, very quietly, he said, "This isn't over." "Yes," I replied with a certainty I'd never felt before. "It is." Through the rain-streaked window, I saw headlights illuminate briefly as a car pulled away from the curb. Whether Richard was truly leaving or merely repositioning, I couldn't know, but something fundamental had changed in the balance of power between us. I called the police immediately, reporting the violation of the restraining order and the threats. Then I woke Kate and Mark, explaining the situation in the calm, clear voice of someone who had finally stepped into her own authority. As we waited for the police to arrive, I realized I was no longer trembling. The fear that had been my constant companion for 20 years hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something different, a vigilance unclouded by confusion or self-doubt. "We'll need a better security system," Mark said, checking the locks on doors and windows. "Cameras, motion sensors, the works. I'll pay for it," I said, thinking of the temporary maintenance Judge Harmon had granted me that morning. "This is my battle. You shouldn't have to fortify your home because of it." Kate shook her head. "That's what he wants you to think, that you're alone, that your problems are a burden to others. But you're not alone, Jen. You never were. We just couldn't reach you behind the walls he built." The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers who took my statement with professional efficiency, checked the perimeter of the house, and promised additional patrols throughout the night. They couldn't arrest Richard without direct evidence he'd been there, but the recorded threats on my phone were enough to strengthen the restraining order. After they left, none of us felt like sleeping. We gathered in Kate's kitchen, the heart of her home, where so many of my own happiest childhood memories had been formed. Mark made coffee while Kate called her principal to request a personal day. My nephews, bleary-eyed but curious, joined us briefly before being reassured and sent back to bed. "What happens now?" Mark asked, setting mugs before us. "War," I said simply. "Richard won't retreat for long. Tonight was just reconnaissance, testing my resolve, looking for weaknesses. He'll try different tactics tomorrow. But you're ready," Kate observed, studying my face. Was I? The Jennifer who had left the restaurant 2 days ago with divorce papers in her purse had been acting on years of careful planning. Yes, but also on desperate hope. The Jennifer sitting in this kitchen at dawn, watching the rain turn to gentle morning mist, felt like someone else entirely, someone stronger, clearer, unwilling to surrender another day to fear. "I'm getting ready," I corrected. "This is just the beginning." By noon, Richard had launched his counteroffensive. It began with a call from my former hairdresser, Maurice, who'd been styling my hair at Richard's insistence for 15 years. "Jennifer, darling," he gushed when I answered. "I've been trying to reach you. Richard told me everything. Such a terrible misunderstanding. He's reserved the full spa package for you today. Car service will pick you up in an hour." A familiar strategy, the extravagant gesture, the public display of generosity that made Richard appear the devoted husband, while simultaneously tracking my location and controlling my movements. "Thank you, Maurice," I said pleasantly, "but I'm afraid I have other plans today." "But darling," he protested. Richard was most insistent. "He's worried about you." "I'm sure he is," I replied. "Please give the appointment to someone else." Next came the flower delivery. 3 dozen white roses, my favorite, with a card in Richard's precise handwriting. 20 years deserves a conversation, not lawyers. Call me when you remember who we really are. Once, such gestures would have weakened my resolve, reawakening the hope that perhaps Richard could change, that perhaps our marriage could be salvaged. Now they seemed transparent, manipulative, breadcrumbs designed to lead me back into captivity. The third attack was more direct. A call from Martin Whiteley, Richard's attorney. "Mrs. Caldwell," he began formally, "I'm calling with a revised settlement offer from Dr. Caldwell. $500,000, the Cape Cod vacation property, and your vehicle. In exchange, you sign a comprehensive NDA regarding all aspects of your marriage and withdraw all abuse allegations. $500,000, a fraction of what Richard was worth, but more than most people would see in a lifetime. The Cape House I'd always loved for its distance from Boston society. My own car. Freedom, of a sort. Please inform Dr. Caldwell that I decline," I said, surprising myself with how little temptation I felt. "Mrs. Caldwell," Whiteley's tone grew sharper, "this is an extremely generous offer given the prenuptial agreement you signed. I strongly advise you to reconsider." "Mr. Whiteley," I replied, channeling the calm authority I'd witnessed in Judge Harmon. "When you speak with my husband again, please deliver a message. Tell him Sarah Winters has been deposed. It wasn't true, not yet, but the sharp intake of breath from the attorney told me the bluff had landed. I'll convey your response," he said stiffly before ending the call. Alan called moments later. Richard's attorney just withdrew the settlement offer and requested an emergency hearing to contest the maintenance order. Something spooked them. What happened? I explained my conversation, the implied threat about Sarah's evidence. "Bold move," Alan said, approval evident in his voice. "But now we need to actually depose Sarah before she leaves town. Can you get in touch with her?" The thumb drive had included a new contact number, one Richard wouldn't know. Sarah answered on the 3rd ring. "I was wondering when you'd call," she said without preamble. "He's been looking for me. Send hospital security to my apartment." "We need your testimony," I explained. "On record. Under oath." There was a long pause. "When?" "Today, if possible. Before you leave Boston." Another pause. "I can delay my departure until tomorrow morning, but not at your lawyer's office. Richard will have someone watching it." We arranged to meet at a conference room Alan sometimes used in a suburban office park. Anonymous, accessible, secure. Sarah would arrive separately, through a service entrance. The deposition would be videotaped, transcribed, and sealed until needed. "Be careful," Sarah warned before hanging up. "He's called an emergency staff meeting at the hospital for 4 p.m. I don't know what he's planning, but he seems confident." After consulting with Alan, I spent the next 2 hours compiling everything from Sarah's thumb drive into organized categories: financial deception, infidelity, professional misconduct, threats, and surveillance. The mountain of evidence was simultaneously vindicating and devastating, proof that I hadn't imagined Richard's betrayals, but also confirmation that my entire marriage had been built on systematic deception. Kate drove me to Sarah's deposition, taking a circuitous route to ensure we weren't followed. The office park was quiet in late afternoon, most businesses already closed for the day. Alan met us at a side entrance, ushering us through service corridors to a windowless conference room where Sarah waited with a court reporter. The deposition lasted 3 hours. Sarah answered every question with the same meticulous attention to detail she'd brought to managing Richard's professional life. Yes, she had direct knowledge of his affairs. Yes, she had booked hotel rooms, purchased gifts, arranged travel. Yes, She had witnessed him transferring funds between accounts he concealed from his wife. Yes, she had seen evidence of physical abuse. Jennifer arriving at the office with badly concealed bruises, wearing sunglasses indoors, making excuses for last-minute cancellations after particularly volatile nights. "Why didn't you report what you saw?" Alan asked gently. Sarah's composure faltered for the first time. "Because he controlled my livelihood. Because he paid for my mother's care and reminded me of it whenever I showed the slightest disloyalty. Because," she paused, gathering herself, "because I was a coward." When it was over, the court reporter sealed the transcript. Sarah handed Alan a final USB drive. "Security footage from my apartment when he came after me," she explained. "I've included the police report I filed the next day." We parted with awkward gratitude. This woman who had enabled Richard's double life for 15 years, but who had finally chosen truth over continued complicity. "Be safe," I said, as she left through the back exit. "You too," she replied. "He won't forgive either of us." Back at Kate's house, we found Mark in the driveway, installing the first components of a comprehensive security system: cameras with night vision, motion sensors, floodlights. Inside, Kate was on the phone, her expression grim. "What's happened?" I asked as she ended the call. "That was Sandra from my department," she said slowly. "She just got back from a medical appointment at Boston General. There's a rumor spreading through the hospital that you're being investigated for prescription drug theft during your nursing days. Richard apparently mentioned it during an emergency staff meeting this afternoon. The strategy was classic Richard: attack my reputation, undermine my credibility before I could damage his. As a respected physician making concerned statements to colleagues, his words would carry weight, raising doubts about any accusations I might make. Can he do that? Mark demanded. Just make up crimes? He's being careful, I said, recognizing the pattern. He's not filing charges or making official allegations, just sharing concerns with trusted colleagues who will spread them further. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was unfamiliar, but the subject line made my blood run cold. Thought you should see this. The email contained a single attachment, a photo of me, clearly taken with a long-range lens through Kate's guest room window. I was changing clothes, partially undressed. The message beneath it was simple. More where this came from. These could go to your nephew's school, or worse places online. Richard just wants to talk. Kate swore when I showed her. That's it. We're calling the police again. And tell them what? I asked wearily. We can't prove Richard took the photo or sent the email. The account is probably untraceable. So we just let him terrorize you? Kate demanded. I stared at the invasive image, thinking of the videos Richard had threatened me with the night before. More violations, more evidence of how completely my privacy had been compromised throughout my marriage. No, I said finally. We don't let him terrorize me, but we don't play his game either. I forwarded the email to Alan with instructions to add it to our evidence file, then deleted it from my phone. Whatever Richard expected, panic, submission, a desperate call begging him to suppress the images, he wouldn't get it from me. What's our next move? Mark asked, ever practical. I considered the question carefully. Richard had demonstrated his willingness to escalate, from manipulation to intimidation to outright threats. The pattern was familiar, but for the first time, I wasn't reacting with fear or accommodation. Instead, I felt a strange, cold clarity. We need to secure Sarah's evidence in multiple locations, I said, and we need to prepare for Richard's next move. Which will be? Kate prompted. I thought of the man I'd lived with for 20 years, the calculating mind behind the charming facade. He'll try to isolate me, cut off my support system, make me feel I have no choice but to return to him. That's not going to happen, Kate declared fiercely. But as darkness fell and the new security lights illuminated the perimeter of the house, I wasn't so certain. Richard had resources I couldn't match, connections throughout Boston's elite circles, and a reputation that provided him with both shield and sword. What did I have, besides a sister's loyalty and a thumb drive full of secrets? The answer came to me as I prepared for bed, unexpected in its simplicity. I had truth. After decades of living within Richard's carefully constructed narrative, I finally possessed the unvarnished reality of our marriage, not just my experiences, but documented evidence of his systematic betrayals. In the bathroom mirror, I studied my reflection, a woman approaching middle age, with lines etched by years of fear and hypervigilance. But there was something else there too, something emerging from beneath the careful mask of the perfect doctor's wife: determination. Richard had built his power on my silence. Perhaps it was time to discover what happened when I finally spoke. Morning arrived with unexpected allies. Alan called at 7:30 a.m. with news from an unlikely source. "Gregory Sullivan's office just contacted me," he said, referring to the chief of surgery at Boston General, Richard's colleague, mentor, and friend for over 15 years. "He wants to meet with you. Privately. Doctor." Sullivan had always been polite to me at hospital functions, but like most of Richard's professional circle, he maintained a careful distance, treating me as an appendage to my husband rather than a person in my own right. "Did he say why?" I asked, immediately suspicious. "Only that it concerns matters of mutual importance, and that Richard is not to know about the meeting." I considered the possibilities. A trap seemed most likely, Richard using Sullivan to gather intelligence or pressure me into returning. But there was another, more intriguing possibility. Perhaps Sullivan had his own reasons for breaking ranks. "His daughter," I said suddenly, remembering Sarah's revelation. "Richard took his 19-year-old daughter to a hotel 2 years ago." Silence on the line as Alan processed this. That would certainly explain Sullivan's interest in a private conversation. We arranged to meet Sullivan at Alan's alternate office space, the same location where Sarah had given her deposition. Kate insisted on driving me again, taking different routes, watching constantly for signs we were being followed. "I don't like this," she said as we approached the nondescript office building. "Sullivan has been Richard's friend forever. Why would he suddenly want to help you?" "Not to help me," I corrected. "To protect his daughter, or his reputation, or both." Dr. Sullivan was already waiting when we arrived, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the small conference room. At 65, he remained imposing, tall, silver-haired, with the authoritative presence that had guided Boston General's surgical department for 2 decades. "Mrs. Caldwell," he greeted me formally. "Thank you for meeting me." "It's Ms. Mitchell now," I corrected gently, reclaiming my identity with the simple statement. "Or it will be once the divorce is finalized." He nodded, his expression guarded. "Your attorney said you had concerns about confidentiality." "I have concerns about many things, Dr. Sullivan, including why the chief of surgery wants a secret meeting with his colleague's wife during divorce proceedings." Alan sat beside me, notebook open, a silent reminder that this wasn't a social call, but a legal matter. Sullivan glanced at his expensive watch. "I'll be direct. Certain allegations have come to my attention regarding Richard's interactions with my daughter, Hannah." "What sort of allegations?" I asked, though I already knew. He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Inappropriate professional boundaries. Hannah worked as a summer intern in the neurosurgery department 2 years ago, while home from college. I've recently learned Richard may have pursued a relationship with her." "Sexual relationship?" I clarified, refusing to allow euphemisms. Sullivan flinched visibly. "Hannah denies anything improper occurred, but I've received evidence suggesting otherwise." "From whom?" "An anonymous source. Email with hotel receipts, text messages." Sarah's final act of rebellion, I realized. She hadn't just given me the evidence. She'd sent copies to those most affected by Richard's betrayals. "What do you want from me?" I asked directly. Sullivan's professional composure cracked slightly. "I want to know if it's true, if there are others, if this is a pattern." "Why come to me? Why not ask Richard directly?" "Because I know Richard," he said simply. "I've known him for 20 years. I've mentored him, promoted him, defended him against previous concerns. The phrase hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. How many concerns had been buried over the years? How many women had tried to speak up only to be silenced by Richard's powerful allies? "Yes," I said finally. "It's a pattern. I have documented evidence of 23 affairs over our 20-year marriage. Your daughter appears to be one of them." The blood drained from Sullivan's face. 23? "That we know of," Alan interjected smoothly. "We have hotel receipts, credit card statements, emails, and testimony from Richard's former office manager confirming these relationships." Sullivan slumped slightly in his chair. "I need to see the evidence regarding Hannah." "That can be arranged," I said carefully. "But I need something in return." His eyes narrowed. "What?" your testimony about the previous concerns you mentioned, and your promise not to warn Richard that we've spoken. For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. There have been 3 formal complaints from nursing staff over the years, 2 allegations of sexual harassment, 1 of creating a hostile work environment. As department chief, I reviewed them. Each time I helped manage the situation. Managed how? Alan asked. Transfers to other departments, letters of recommendation for positions at other hospitals. In one case, a cash settlement with a confidentiality agreement. Cover-ups, in other words. The protection powerful men offered one another at the expense of vulnerable women. Did you ever speak to Richard about his behavior? I asked. Sullivan had the grace to look ashamed. I advised discretion. I reminded him of his position and responsibilities. I never imagined he would target my daughter. And there it was, the fundamental inequality that had allowed Richard to operate unchecked for decades. Harassment of nurses was a management issue requiring discretion. Only when the victim was the daughter of a man with equal power did it become a real concern. I'll provide the evidence regarding your daughter, I said, if you agree to give a formal statement about the previous complaints and how they were handled. Sullivan hesitated, undoubtedly calculating the professional consequences of such a statement. Finally, he nodded. I'm retiring next year anyway. Perhaps it's time to clean house before I go. As we concluded the meeting, Sullivan paused at the door. For what it's worth, Ms. Mitchell, I owe you an apology. I saw things over the years. Comments Richard made, the way he controlled your movements at hospital functions. Once, a bruise on your wrist you tried to cover with makeup. I should have said something. The acknowledgement, too late to prevent 20 years of abuse but still somehow meaningful, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Yes, I agreed quietly. You should have. After Sullivan left, Alan turned to me with newfound respect. That was masterfully handled. Sullivan's testimony about the prior complaints could be crucial in establishing a pattern of behavior. But I was already thinking beyond the divorce proceedings, beyond the immediate battle with Richard. Contact the nurses who filed the complaints, I instructed. See if they'll speak with me. Not for the record. Not yet. Just conversation. What are you planning? Alan asked, intrigued. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But I think it's time to find out how many other women Richard has hurt over the years, and whether they might be ready to stop hiding. Back at Kate's house, I found her in the kitchen with an unexpected visitor. Detective Rosario from the Boston Police Department's Domestic Violence Unit. Ms. Mitchell, the detective greeted me. Your sister called us about the threatening email and photograph you received. I'd like to take a report. Kate shot me an apologetic look. I know you said the police can't prove it was Richard, but I thought we should at least document everything. She was right, of course. Creating a paper trail of Richard's escalating behavior might prove crucial if things worsened. Detective Rosario, a woman around my age with watchful eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened carefully as I described the email, the photo, the threats about videos. She took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, her expression professional but sympathetic. Unfortunately, you're right that these types of communications are often difficult to trace, she acknowledged when I finished. But the pattern you're describing, escalating control tactics following separation, is something we take very seriously. Statistically, it's the most dangerous time for survivors of intimate partner violence. Survivor. The word startled me. Was that what I was now? No longer a victim, but someone who had escaped, who had survived. What can we do? I asked. Document everything. Save emails, texts, voicemails. Note dates, times, and details of any contact or attempted contact. Consider obtaining a more comprehensive protection order that specifically addresses digital harassment. She handed me her card with her direct number. And call immediately if he violates the existing order again. Don't wait. Don't second-guess yourself. Your safety is the priority. After she left, I sat with Kate at the kitchen table, turning the detective's card over in my fingers. You did the right thing, I told her. Calling her. Kate squeezed my hand. I should have done it 20 years ago. We all should have. The doorbell rang, the new security system immediately displaying a video feed of the front porch on Kate's phone. A courier with a large envelope. Mark, who had the day off, retrieved it and brought it to the kitchen. The return address was Alan's office, but the handwriting wasn't his. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a printout of an email thread between Richard and Melissa Bradford from 3 days earlier, the morning after I'd left him at the restaurant. Richard. She's gone. Took nothing but clothes. Lawyer served divorce papers this morning. Melissa. How much does she know? Richard. Nothing that can be proven. The prenup will keep her quiet. She'll take the settlement I offer rather than fight. Melissa. And us? Richard. Soon. Once this is handled. Bradford will never leave his hospital position for a divorce scandal. Melissa. I've waited 3 years, Richard. I won't wait much longer. Richard. Trust me. She'll be gone from our lives within the month. Then we start fresh. The final line of the email was followed by a handwritten note. Thought you should know what they're planning. Some of us are watching. You're not alone. No signature. No indication of who had sent it. Another ally emerging from the shadows? Or another of Richard's manipulations? Could be genuine, Mark observed after reading it. Could also be Richard trying to make you paranoid about who you can trust. Either way, Kate added, it shows he's planning something aggressive to wrap this up quickly. I studied the email exchange again, focusing on Richard's confidence, his certainty that I would accept whatever settlement he offered rather than fight. He doesn't know me at all, I realized aloud. 20 years, and he never actually saw me. Just his creation, his projection, his mistake, Kate said with grim satisfaction. I nodded, a plan forming as I read the messages again. Yes, and maybe we can use that. For the first time since leaving the brownstone, I felt not just reactive, but strategic. Richard was moving pieces across the board, assuming he knew my next move. But he was playing against an opponent he'd never bothered to understand. A woman who had spent 20 years observing his tactics, learning his vulnerabilities, and developing a patience he couldn't comprehend. Call Alan, I told Kate. Tell him to delay responding to Martin Whiteley's latest settlement offer. Tell him I'm formulating a counter-strategy. What are you going to do? She asked. I smiled slightly, feeling a strange, unfamiliar confidence rising within me. Something Richard would never expect. I'm going to tell the truth. The truth, as it turned out, had power that even Richard's carefully constructed fortress of privilege couldn't withstand. Over the next 3 days, I spoke with 7 women who had experienced Richard's professional misconduct. Nurses, administrative staff, even a female resident who had transferred to another hospital rather than continue under his supervision. None were willing to go public yet, fearing career repercussions in Boston's close-knit medical community. But each confirmed the pattern Sarah had described. Each provided another piece of the mosaic that revealed Richard's true character. On the 4th morning after my meeting with Sullivan, Alan called with news that changed everything. Hannah Sullivan has come forward, he said without preamble. She's filed a formal complaint with the hospital ethics committee about Richard's conduct during her internship. She's 21 now, in her senior year of college, and apparently when her father confronted her with the evidence, she broke down and admitted everything. Is she okay? I asked, thinking of the young woman I'd met only a few times at hospital functions. Bright, ambitious, with her father's confidence but none of his arrogance. Shaken, but resolute. She's provided a detailed statement about how Richard used his position to pressure her into a relationship, then threatened her career prospects if she told anyone. Alan paused. She specifically mentioned that he told her, "No one would believe you over me, just like they've never believed my wife." The words, so similar to what Richard had said to me countless times, sent a chill through me. He used me as an example, to silence her. Yes, and that's what finally convinced her to speak out. She said she couldn't bear the thought of being complicit in your continued abuse. Tears sprang to my eyes, not of sorrow, but of a complicated gratitude. This young woman, herself a victim, had found courage I had lacked for so many years. What happens now? I asked. The hospital has placed Richard on administrative leave pending investigation. Sullivan is recusing himself due to conflict of interest, but he's appointed a 3-person panel to review the complaint. They've requested our evidence regarding the previous complaints as well. And Richard? That's the concerning part, Alan admitted. He's gone dark, hasn't responded to the hospital's notification, hasn't contacted his attorney since yesterday, hasn't been seen at the brownstone or his office. Alarm prickled along my skin. He's planning something. That would be my assessment as well. I've advised Kate and Mark to maintain security precautions. And Jennifer, I think you should consider staying somewhere else for a few days, somewhere Richard wouldn't think to look. I appreciated the concern, but the suggestion felt wrong somehow. No, I'm done hiding from him, done rearranging my life to accommodate his threats. This isn't about hiding, Alan argued. It's about tactical advantage. Richard is most dangerous now that he's cornered. Professional disgrace, financial exposure, potential criminal charges. He's facing the collapse of everything he's built. He was right, of course. The Richard I knew would never accept defeat gracefully, but neither could I continue living in fear, waiting for his next move. I need to think about it, I told Alan. In the meantime, can you arrange for me to speak with Hannah? I'd like to thank her. The meeting was set for that afternoon. Neutral territory, a quiet cafe in Cambridge, far from Boston General and the social circles Richard dominated. Kate drove me again, but this time I asked her to leave after dropping me off. This conversation needed to be private, woman to woman. Hannah Sullivan arrived precisely on time, looking both younger and older than I remembered, a college senior with the wary eyes of someone who had learned difficult truths too early. Ms. Mitchell, she greeted me, extending her hand formally. Jennifer, please, I corrected, leading her to a quiet table in the back corner. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. She nodded, her composure remarkable for someone so young facing such turbulence. I should have come forward sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. No, I said firmly. Don't apologize. Richard is the only one responsible for his actions. Not you, not me, not any of the women he manipulated. Hannah's careful facade cracked slightly. He told me you were mentally unstable, that you invented problems, that you needed constant management. He made it sound like he was a saint for staying with you. The familiar narrative. Richard the long-suffering husband, Jennifer the troublesome wife. That's what abusers do, I said gently. They create alternate realities where they're the heroes of the story. I believed him, she admitted, shame evident in her voice. I thought I was special, that he saw something in me no one else did. By the time I realized it was all manipulation, I was too embarrassed to tell anyone, too afraid of what it would do to my father, to my future in medicine. I understand, I assured her. I stayed silent for 20 years. Her eyes met mine directly. How did you finally leave? The question caught me off guard. How had I found the strength after so many years? What had finally tipped the balance from endurance to action? Gradually, I answered honestly. I built an escape route piece by piece over years, gathered evidence, saved money where I could, made connections he couldn't control. And then, one day, I realized I was ready, that I deserved more than survival. Hannah nodded, absorbing this. The hospital panel wants me to testify formally next week. They're investigating other complaints now, too. Are you prepared for that? I asked, knowing the scrutiny she would face, the questioning of her motives, the potential damage to her reputation in a field that still often protected powerful men at the expense of vulnerable women. I am, she said with surprising firmness. Whatever happens to my medical career, I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent while he continued hurting others. She hesitated before adding, Your courage made this possible. Knowing you got away gave me hope. The words struck deep, reshaping my understanding of my own actions. Had it been courage all along, not just desperation? Had my private rebellion against Richard's control meant something beyond my own survival? As we parted, Hannah surprised me with a brief, fierce hug. Be careful, she whispered. He's not the kind of man who accepts defeat. I returned to Kate's house to find it empty. A note on the kitchen counter explaining that she'd taken her sons to their soccer practice and would be back by dinner. The house felt suddenly too quiet, too exposed despite the new security system. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Alan, no voicemail. Unusual for him not to leave a message. I dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. Something felt wrong. Alan always answered, or at least returned calls promptly. I tried his office next, getting his assistant instead. Jennifer, she said, relief evident in her voice. Alan's been trying to reach you. Richard showed up at the office an hour ago, demanding to know where you were meeting Hannah. When Alan refused to tell him, things got heated. Security had to escort Richard out. My blood went cold. Is Alan okay? Shaken but fine. He's at the courthouse filing for an emergency hearing to modify the restraining order. He asked me to tell you to stay where you are and keep the security system armed, but the warning came too late. As I ended the call, I heard the distinctive sound of breaking glass from the back of the house. Richard had found me. Fight or flight instinct kicked in, but where could I run? The front door was across an open living room, too exposed. Upstairs would trap me. The nearest neighbors were too far away to hear a scream. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 as I moved toward Kate's study, the only room with a door that locked from the inside. The operator answered just as Richard's voice called out from the kitchen. "Jennifer, I know you're here. We need to talk." 911, what's your emergency? The operator asked. I whispered the address and situation. Home invasion, restraining order violation, potential domestic violence. As I eased the study door closed, turning the lock as silently as possible. "Police are on their way," the operator assured me. "Stay on the line." Richard's footsteps moved through the house methodically, checking each room, calling my name with the same reasonable tone he used with difficult patients, the false calm that had always preceded his worst violence. "This has gone far enough," he was saying, his voice getting closer. "You've made your point, but now you're destroying everything we've built, everything I've worked for." I pressed myself against the wall beside the door, phone clutched to my ear, heart hammering so loudly I was certain he could hear it. "The hospital board is meeting tomorrow," he continued, now just outside the study. "Sullivan's daughter has made ridiculous accusations. My medical license could be suspended. Is that what you want? To ruin me completely?" The doorknob rattled, then silence. "I know you're in there, Jennifer," he said softly. "I can see your car outside. Kate and the boys are at soccer practice until 6. No one's coming to help you." He'd been watching the house, tracking our movements, waiting for the perfect moment when I would be alone. "Police are 3 minutes out," the 911 operator whispered in my ear. "Can you stay hidden until then?" Before I could respond, something heavy slammed against the study door. Once, twice. On the third impact, the wood splintered around the lock. Richard stood in the doorway, disheveled in a way I'd never seen him. Unshaven, shirt wrinkled, eyes feverish with a dangerous combination of rage and desperation. "There you are," he said, as if we were playing some ordinary game of hide and seek. Always hiding from me, always running. I kept the phone gripped tightly, knowing the operator was still listening, recording. "The police are coming, Richard. You're violating the restraining order." He laughed, a hollow, unhinged sound that raised the hair on the back of my neck. "More paperwork, more legal procedures. Do you think I care about that now? You've already taken everything that matters." "I haven't taken anything," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "You destroyed it yourself. Every lie, every affair, every time you raised your hand to me, those were your choices." His face contorted with fury. "You ungrateful bitch. I gave you everything, a life most women would kill for. And this is how you repay me? By destroying my reputation? Turning people against me?" "I'm just telling the truth," I said simply. "After 20 years of your lies, I'm finally telling the truth." He lunged forward, crossing the room in 2 strides, hands reaching for my throat with familiar intent. But this time, I was ready. This time I wasn't frozen by shock or confusion or misplaced loyalty. I ducked under his grasp, shoving the heavy desk chair between us, gaining precious seconds as he stumbled. "Stay back," I commanded, no longer the pleading voice he was accustomed to hearing. "Touch me again, and assault charges will be the least of your problems." Something in my tone, the unfamiliar authority perhaps, or the absence of fear, made him hesitate. "You think you've won," he said, circling the chair slowly. "You and Sullivan's little whore of a daughter. You think you can destroy me and walk away?" "Hannah was 20 years old," I said, maintaining distance between us. "A student under your supervision. You used the same tactics on her that you used on me. Isolation, manipulation, threats. The same tactics you've used on every woman who trusted you. They wanted what I offered," he sneered. "Access, advancement, the benefits of my position." "They wanted to be treated as human beings," I corrected, "with dignity and basic respect. Things you've never understood." In the distance, I heard sirens, salvation approaching, but not fast enough. Richard heard them too, his eyes narrowing as he calculated remaining time. "You think a restraining order violation will stop me?" he asked, surprisingly calm now. "A few nights in jail? A fine? I'll post bail and be out before morning, and then we'll continue this conversation properly." The threat hung in the air between us, but for the first time in 20 years, it didn't land with its intended impact. I was done being terrorized, done rearranging my existence to accommodate his rage. "No, Richard," I said quietly. "We won't. This conversation, this marriage, this power you thought you had over me, it's over. Nothing is over until I say it is," he snarled, lunging again. This time his hands found my throat, fingers digging into flesh with practiced precision. I clawed at his wrists, struggling for breath, for purchase, for any advantage. The study door crashed open. Not police, but Mark, home unexpectedly early, taking in the scene with one shocked glance before launching himself at Richard. The impact sent all three of us sprawling. Richard's grip loosened as he turned to face this new threat, giving me the moment I needed to scramble away, gasping for air. "Get out of my house," Mark ordered, positioning himself between Richard and me. Richard laughed, the sound chilling in its detachment from reality. "Your house? This is between my wife and me. Family business." "She's not your wife anymore," Mark replied. "She's family, our family, and you're trespassing." The sirens grew louder, now just blocks away. Richard glanced toward the window, calculating his options. The consequences of being found here in direct violation of the restraining order, with witnesses to assault. What happened next unfolded with surreal clarity. Richard's sudden movement toward the desk drawer, the metallic gleam of the letter opener he seized, his advance toward Mark with deadly intent. "Richard, no!" I screamed, but it was too late. The blade arced through air, finding its target in Mark's shoulder as he tried to block the attack. Blood bloomed across Mark's shirt as he staggered backward. Richard advanced again, raising the makeshift weapon for a second strike. Without conscious thought, I grabbed the heavy crystal paperweight from Kate's desk and brought it down on Richard's arm with all the strength 20 years of suppressed rage could generate. Bone cracked audibly. The letter opener clattered to the floor. Richard turned to me, shock and disbelief replacing the murderous determination of moments before. For the first time in our relationship, I had struck back. "You hit me," he said, cradling his injured arm, sounding more bewildered than angry. "You actually hit me." "Yes," I acknowledged, standing my ground as police officers flooded through the front door, weapons drawn. "And I'm not sorry." The aftermath unfolded in fragments. Richard handcuffed and led away, still protesting that there had been a misunderstanding, that I was unwell, that he'd only come to check on me. Mark receiving paramedics' attention for the wound that, thankfully, proved less severe than the blood suggested. My own statement given to Detective Rosario, who had responded personally to the call. "We've got him on multiple felonies," she assured me, as evidence technicians photographed the damage. "Breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, assault with a deadly weapon. With your testimony and Mr. Peterson's, he won't be granted bail this time." Kate arrived home to chaos. Police cars in her driveway, crime scene tape across her study doorway, her husband being loaded into an ambulance despite his protests that he was fine. "Oh God, Jen," she gasped, pulling me into a fierce embrace when she found me sitting in a patrol car, a blanket around my shoulders despite the mild evening. "I should never have left you alone. It's not your fault," I told her, the words coming automatically after years of absorbing blame that wasn't mine. It was always going to end this way. Richard couldn't accept losing control. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of legal proceedings, medical examinations, and media inquiries as news of Dr. Richard Caldwell's arrest spread through Boston's medical community. The hospital board accelerated their investigation, now expanded to include Richard's attack on Mark. Hannah Sullivan's complaint was joined by 3 others, women who found courage in her example and came forward with their own experiences of harassment and coercion. On the 3rd morning, I sat in Alan's office, reviewing the cascade of consequences Richard now faced. Criminal charges carrying potential prison time, a medical license suspended pending investigation, frozen assets as financial improprieties came to light, and the disintegration of the carefully constructed reputation he'd valued above all else. "The district attorney is offering a plea deal," Alan explained. 8 years with possibility of parole after 5, in exchange for guilty pleas on all charges. His attorney is pushing him to accept. "Will he?" I asked, trying to imagine Richard, with his pathological need for control, submitting to the constraints of prison life. Alan shrugged. "Hard to say. The evidence is overwhelming. But Richard has never been one to acknowledge reality when it contradicts his preferred narrative. Through the office window, I watched Boston continue its daily rhythms, people hurrying along sidewalks, traffic flowing, life proceeding with indifferent normality. How strange that my personal earthquake hadn't altered the city's landscape in any visible way. What happens to me now? I asked quietly. Alan looked surprised by the question. That's entirely up to you. Legally speaking, the divorce will proceed regardless of Richard's criminal case. The prenuptial agreement has been effectively invalidated by his actions and the evidence of coercion. You'll receive an equitable division of marital assets, which, given the financial discoveries we've made, will be substantial. Financial security. After years of carefully managed deprivation, an allowance doled out by Richard, expenditures monitored and questioned, independence systematically undermined, I would have resources of my own. And the brownstone? I asked, thinking of the house that had been both prison and home for 2 decades. It's part of the marital assets, Alan confirmed. You could claim it in the settlement if you wished, or sell it and use the proceeds to start fresh somewhere else. Start fresh. The concept seemed simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Who was Jennifer Mitchell, without Richard Caldwell defining her existence? What would I build with this unexpected freedom? I need some time, I said, rising from my chair, to think about what I want next. Alan nodded understanding. Take all the time you need. Richard isn't going anywhere for the foreseeable future. Outside, autumn had painted Boston in russet and gold, the Charles River reflecting a perfect blue sky as I walked along its banks. 20 years ago, Richard and I had strolled the same path during our whirlwind courtship, his arm possessive around my waist, my future narrowing with each step, though I hadn't recognized it then. Now I walked alone, my pace unhurried, no destination in mind beyond the simple pleasure of movement without constraint. When had I last wandered without purpose? When had I last made choices based solely on my own desires, rather than Richard's expectations? My phone buzzed with a text from Kate. Mark home from hospital. Doing well. Dinner at 7 if you want to join. The simplicity of the invitation, the absence of pressure, the gentle acknowledgement of my autonomy brought unexpected tears to my eyes. This was love without possession, care without control. I texted back, "Thanks. We'll be there." As I continued walking, I found myself approaching Massachusetts General Hospital, the place where I'd met Richard, where I'd worked as a nurse before marriage transformed me into an accessory to his ambition. On impulse, I entered the lobby, letting muscle memory guide me through corridors that had once been as familiar as my own home. The nursing station on the neurosurgery floor had been renovated since my time there, but the controlled chaos of a hospital unit remained unchanged. The quiet efficiency of nurses moving between tasks, the electronic chime of monitoring equipment, the underlying current of purpose that had once given meaning to my days. "Can I help you?" a young nurse asked, noticing me hovering at the edge of the station. "Just visiting," I replied with a smile. "I used to work here, many years ago." Her expression brightened. "Oh, were you a nurse?" "I was," I confirmed, surprised by how right the words felt after so long. "Neuro unit, before it was renovated." "That's amazing," she said with genuine interest. "We're actually short-staffed right now. The hospital's running a returnship program for nurses who've been out of practice. You should talk to Diane in HR if you're interested." A returnship. A pathway back to the career I'd abandoned for Richard's convenience. Could I do it? Retrain? Requalify? Reclaim the professional identity I'd set aside 20 years ago? "I might just do that," I said, accepting the card she offered with contact information. Back outside, the late afternoon sun gilded the Boston skyline, casting long shadows across the river. I found a bench facing the water and sat, watching sailboats navigate the gentle current, their white sails billowing with the same breeze that carried autumn leaves in lazy spirals to the ground around me. My phone buzzed again. Hannah Sullivan this time. Panel concluded its review. Richard's privileges permanently revoked at Boston General. Thought you should know. Another piece of Richard's carefully constructed empire, crumbling in his absence. I texted back a simple, "Thank you." For the information, yes, but more for her courage in coming forward, when it would have been easier to remain silent. As dusk gathered, painting the sky in watercolor washes of pink and lavender, I realized I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Possibility. Not happiness, not yet, The wounds were too fresh, the habits of hypervigilance too ingrained to dissolve overnight. But possibility stretched before me like the river, fluid, changing, carrying me toward a future I could shape rather than merely endure. Kate's house glowed with warm light when I arrived for dinner, the chaos of the crime scene now erased, life resuming its normal patterns. Mark greeted me at the door, his arm in a sling, but his smile genuine. "Our hero," I said, embracing him carefully. "Hardly," he demurred. "Just good timing." Inside, Kate's sons argued good-naturedly about a video game, while Kate herself moved between kitchen and dining room, the domestic choreography of a family dinner unfolding with comfortable familiarity. "I visited the hospital today," I told her, as I helped set the table. "Mass General. They have a program for nurses returning to practice after time away." Kate paused, studying my face. "Are you considering it?" "I'm considering everything," I replied honestly. "For the first time in 20 years, I don't know what comes next. It's terrifying and exhilarating." She nodded, understanding. "Whatever you decide, you don't have to figure it out alone. You can stay here as long as you need." The offer was sincere, the love behind it real. But as we gathered around the table, Kate's imperfect, wonderful family plus me, the displaced sister finding her way back to herself, I knew that while this haven had been essential to my escape, it couldn't be my final destination. "I think I might look for my own place," I said, as we cleared dishes after dinner. "Something small, just for me. A starting point." "Of course," Kate agreed, no hurt in her acceptance. "But promise me one thing." "What's that?" "No more sacrificing yourself for anyone else's vision of who you should be." She squeezed my hand. "You've earned the right to be entirely, unapologetically yourself." Later, in the quiet of the guest room that had sheltered me through the storm of leaving Richard, I opened my laptop and began a list, not of possessions I wanted to claim in the divorce settlement, nor of grievances I wanted to air in court, but of possibilities I wanted to explore in this unexpected third act of my life. Nursing returnship program, small apartment with large windows, art classes, I'd always wanted to paint, travel, somewhere I'd choose, not somewhere Richard preferred. The list grew, each item a declaration of independence, each possibility a thread in the new tapestry I would weave from the unraveled fabric of my former life. The final item I added, after long consideration, therapy, to understand how I'd become so lost, to ensure I never disappeared again. My grandmother had often told me that the most beautiful gardens grow in soil that has been thoroughly turned, the old growth composted to nourish new blooms. Perhaps that was true of lives as well, the painful uprooting making space for fresh growth, the darkness essential for transformation. Outside, rain began to fall, gentle, cleansing, carrying autumn leaves from branches ready to sleep before spring's renewal. I opened the window slightly, letting the petrichor scent fill the room, breathing deeply of possibility. 20 years ago, I had walked into a life defined by another's expectations. Tomorrow, I would begin writing my own definition, word by careful word, choice by conscious choice. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I looked forward to the blank page before me,